Hi guys, welcome to Simply Scuba. So in our last video, we of course asked what you guys wanted us to compare. You said it, we listened, so now we're looking at some entry kind of mid-level dive computers. In front of me today, I've got the Mares Quad Air and the Oceanic, this is a Veo 4.0. So these are two sort of lower mid-range dive computers. They're gonna do everything that you're gonna need for a recreational dive computer. They're both sort of segment displays. They're fairly large displays. There's a few other kind of things. I mean, they're not watch size, but they're both sort of bigger sized dive computers. One's noticeably bigger than the other. Let's take a closer look at the features and whatnot. But first of all, we're going to take a look at the kind of the aesthetics, what you get with the dive computer, and their general sort of look and feel to them. Okay guys, so first up, let's look at the hardware and the sort of tangible things. So the first thing is that you get with it the usual sort of quick start guides and whatnot. A lot of these are starting to transition to more of a digital version. So one is to help protect the environment, obviously. So you basically go onto their websites and you just download the PDF, which is very, very easy. So as far as stuff that you get with the Oceanic, the Veo, that's about all you get with it. You don't get any little fiddly bits or anything that goes with it. You just get the dive computer and a few sort of quick start guides. With the Mares, much the same, except you do get a little case. And it's just a very simple little neoprene sort of drawstring bag. You can sort of use that to keep your dive computer inside, or you can repurpose it for whatever you want, really. It's just a decent sized, fairly padded, it's like 2mm neoprene case, and yeah, you can put whatever you want in it, really. So let's look at the dive computer, the hardware itself. We're going to start off with the Oceanic. So the Oceanic, a little bit smaller than the Mares. It's a decent size. It's a large screen dive computer. You do have a sort of a segment display. If I just wake it up quickly, if I just turn it so you can see it, there you go. So decent chunky numbers on that. Because it's segments, of course, you are a little bit limited to what you can actually have written on the screen, but hey, it does the job, and yeah, as long as you read the manual beforehand and you have a vague sort of understanding of what your dive computer is trying to tell you, it will be pretty easy to understand. Now the computer itself, the body is made out of plastic, a sort of a polymer. It's got a nice finish to it. That's nice and sort of smooth, no sort of nasty edges or anything. I like the design of it. It's a smart sort of rounded puck design. It's a lot smaller than the traditional pucks, the sort of the Veo 2s and 3s of the world. Yeah, it's got this sort of smart, sort of rounded finish to it, which I definitely like. The straps are hinged, which is always nice if you're transitioning from a wetsuit or a dry suit or just bare wrist. It just gives you a bit more sort of angle on that. And the straps are that kind of reassuring thickness. You've got a decent amount of sort of chunky strap to it, enough strap to go around a dry suit, definitely. And yeah, it's got this kind of finish to it, which gives it almost a soft touch to it, which is, it's a nice feel to it. Metal buckle, I always recommend a metal buckle because it's just stronger than plastic. If this little bit breaks because it's plastic, then you run the risk of losing your dive computer, whereas if it's metal, of course, it's much, much stronger. On the underside, we can see we've got this will be a user-changeable battery, so you don't need any sort of complicated tools, just a coin really could open that up. Of course, it's always recommended that you use the actual battery kit. As much as it states as a CR2450 battery, which you can get in a lot of places, what you can't get is the sealing O-ring, and that is arguably more important than the actual battery itself, because if you can't take it underwater, it's not that much useful. So yeah, always sort of get the authentic battery kit. As far as so the interface, so we've got a 2-button user interface. I usually prefer a few more than 2 buttons, but if they do it right, then it can work out quite nicely. One thing worth noting is you get a scratch guard on the top of this. Very, very useful, because if you scratch that, it's fine. You can take this section off and replace that, but what you can't do is replace the actual screen itself if that ever gets scratched. So it's nice that this comes with a scratch guard as standard. So navigating around, we've got select and then advance. So it's a little limited. You press the sort of advance button to kind of cycle through the screen, and then when you want to go into something, you press the select. To go backwards, you have to hold down that select, but you can only ever cycle through. So if I wanted to go back to that sort of setting, I'd have to go all the way back through all the others and then try and make sure that I land on that. So yeah, not the best user interface, but it gets the job done. And once your dive computer's set up, if you only dive air or you only dive like 30% nitrox, then it's kind of always set up. All you have to do is wait for that sort of water activation. So I quite like it. It's smart. It's got a good sort of feel to it. So let's take a look at the Mares. So the Mares is noticeably bigger. If we compare the size of them, yeah, the Mares has got a larger screen, but the body is that much larger. So if you want plenty of information all on one screen, then yeah, the Mares is definitely the way to go. As far as thickness, not a great deal. The Oceanic is a touch thicker compared to the Mares, but yeah, there's not a great deal. It's probably about ½ centimeter or something, if anything. So the body, the materials itself, again made out of plastic, not quite as nice of a finish, to be honest. We've got some slightly sort of not sharp edges, but just sort of obvious edges just around in places. The plastic doesn't feel quite as sort of high grade, but hey, if that's not what sort of sells a dive computer to you, then fine. The straps themselves, again, I just mentioned it, it's a, I like it when sort of straps actually hinge. These ones aren't hinging, they're quite fixed in that angle. So whilst they do kind of fit over your sort of bare wrist really quite nicely, that kind of sits exactly where you kind of want it on your wrist, and that's not going to sort of roll around once it's done up. But if you're going over a dry suit, something with a chunkier sleeve, then yeah, I'd want something with a bit more give, so it goes around your arm a bit nicer. It does have a nice feature. You'll see this on quite a few dive watches, this kind of wave pattern on the strap. That's just to allow for sort of expanding and compressing sort of wetsuits and dry suits. It's just like a bit of suspension for the strap, just allows for a little bit of give, so it keeps tension on your wrist. And again, just mentioned it, plastic buckles. Not a huge fan, but it does the job. Just keep an eye on it. Make sure it doesn't get sort of crushed or broken. I'd prefer it if that was metal, but hey. Strap itself, a little bit thinner. It does the job, but I prefer the strap on the Oceanic, on the Veo. On the underside, as you can see, we've got a user changeable battery again, very similar design. Just use a coin just to open that up. Same size battery, but again, just make sure you get the correct O-ring because that's more important. And then we've got 2 metal contacts here. It says PC underneath it, so that's for your computer. There'll be a USB download cable, and those will be the 2 contacts that it touches, so you can attach it to a USB and then download your dives onto your computer. So flipping it over, 4-button user interface, so it's going to be a bit more intuitive. And if I just show you, there you go. So the digits a little bit skinnier. I kind of prefer these digits compared to the Oceanic. The Oceanic, if I just sort of hold that side by side, they're chunky. I don't know, I kind of prefer the Mares, to be honest. There's not much in it, that you can read them both pretty easily, but I kind of prefer the display on the quad right now. Yeah, full button user interface, so you can kind of go up and down and go backwards, which is a nice sort of feature. If you're trying to get your dive computer exactly how you want it, you'll be going through all the different sort of, what do you call it, the menu options, and it's nice to go backwards and forwards in case you skip past something that you forgot to. Yeah, it's fairly intuitive to go backwards and forwards and then escape just to come back out. So yeah, as far as a user interface, I prefer the quad. The screen itself, yeah, it's noticeably bigger. It displays more information. It spells it out quite easily for you as well, so you can tell we've got depth. It's going to be your top row, and then your no decompression, your deco is going to be in the middle. Tank data, because this is wireless air integrated, it's going to be at the bottom with your auxiliary information. And then on the right, your left-hand side, you've got N2 and then speed. So this will be like an ascent rate. As you ascend too far, there'll be a little bar graph along the side here. If it gets up to the red, then you know you're going too fast, and the same with your NDL. So as far as like touchy-feely, the aesthetics to it, I like the style and the kind of finish to the Oceanic, but as far as actual usability, I'm leaning towards the quad. So at this point, yeah, I'm leaning towards the quad because after the kind of the novelty of the, oh yeah, it looks and feels nice, when you're actually trying to use the dive computer. If you are doing complicated things, then quad would be the way I'd go. If you're just using for a really standard dive computer, you set it up once and you go for it, then I'd be looking at the Oceanic. But let's look at the specs and what's going on inside the dive computers. Okay, so the software and what's going on the inside. So to start off, let's look at apnea mode. So if you're snorkeling, the Veo, the Oceanic, that will do snorkeling, but the Quad Air can't. So that's quite a big selling point. If you're just sort of snorkeling and you want to measure sort of how deep you can go or how long you can sort of hold your breath, then of course the Oceanic will allow for that. The Quad Air will get confused. It will think you're going on a dive, and as you swim back up, it will complain because your ascent rate has gone too fast. So that's quite a big sort of difference for me. Air integration is the other one. And this is the flip side. The Quad Air, of course, as the name suggests, is air integrated. Doesn't come with a transmitter, but you can fit a transmitter. There is a non-air integrated version of the Quad, which is just called the Quad. But I just wanted to compare these because these have sort of similar web prices right at this point. Moving on to gas switching, so they both can switch to 3 different gases. If you are switching gases and you're using multiple stages under the water, then you can have 3 different mixes and switch between them on both computers, so they're level pegging. Nitrox, both between sort of 21 and, the Mares is between 21 and 99% oxygen. The Oceanic will go to the full 100. It's rare that you get full 100% sort of oxygen, but yeah, that's not a huge difference in my books. Bluetooth. The Oceanic has Bluetooth, which is why it doesn't have a sort of a PC connect on the underside that I can see. There's a couple metal connects, but they don't look like a PC interface. But it has Bluetooth, so that will connect to an app. And yeah, you can just download it on the fly. You don't need sort of cables or wires or USBs, but the Quad Air does not have Bluetooth. So it's a little more older technology. So the Oceanic is kind of pegging it at this point. It's got that more up-to-date technology. Memory, as far as your logbook, so the Oceanic only has 50 hours of memory, so that will last a good week-long liveaboard. You've got plenty of sort of memory on that. But the Quad Air, probably because it's bigger, it's got a larger chip inside of it somewhere, That can store up to 100 hours of diving, so more memory. The only sort of bonus to that is if you're going on a longer holiday and you're not downloading your dives, because basically once it reaches that 100 hours, it will start overwriting the first ones. So if you haven't logged those into a logbook or downloaded them, then you're going to lose them. So yeah, take sort of logbook memory with a pinch of salt. Warranty, they both have 2-year warranties, so they're level pegging in that. The algorithms is where they do separate. So the algorithm is basically telling you how long you can stay at a given depth and when you should come back up, and how you should do it. So the Oceanic has a dual algorithm, so it's got 2 different algorithms inside of it, and you can kind of sort of chop and change those depending on what your buddy's diving on or how conservative you want to be. So you either have the DSAT, which is a pelagic DSAT, or you've got Z+, which is more like a Buhlmann sort of algorithm, compared to the Quad, which uses an RGBM, a bit more sort of Haldane. So yeah, there's a huge, lots of people are talking about sort of which is better. Just kind of do your research, kind of see which one kind of suits you, whether you want it to be a bit more conservative or a bit more flexible. It swings and roundabouts. They'll both do the same thing. They'll make your diving safer. One's just a little bit more conservative. The other one's a bit more flexible. Just kind of make your mind up on that. And it's always worth looking at what your diving buddy uses, because otherwise one computer will tell you to ascend when the other one says you've got about 20 minutes of no deco left. So yeah, it's worth kind of sort of researching which algorithm your dive computer's using. And then battery, they both use the same size battery. The Oceanic quotes it has about a 300 sort of hour battery. The Maris has a long battery life. They didn't specify a number. If anyone has got a Quad Air and has some experience in how long a battery lasts, then definitely put it in the comments below. Maris just quote it as long, which is fairly vague. As far as price, so they have recommended retails. The Oceanic sits at about £250 at the moment. The Maris Quad Air sits at around £300. So you're really paying for that air integration and sort of general screen size and whatnot. As far as specs, if you're not too fussed about air integration, then I'd go with the Oceanic. It's you've got more flexibility with your algorithms. You've got the free dive, the apnea mode as well. But if you are going to move to air integration, then it's worth looking or considering the Quad Air. Bluetooth is another selling point. You don't have to have like USB cables and carry them around and your laptop and whatnot. You can just download an app and it will just wirelessly send it between them. So at this point, I'm leaning towards the Oceanic. But of course, let's put it all together and see what we think. Okay, so I've got these 2 dive computers sat in front of me. We kind of looked at all the ins and outs of them, but to boil it down, which one would I invest in? So I'm assuming that we are just a recreational diver. You go on holiday abroad sort of a couple times a year, and yeah, you just want a decent sized screen, then I'd go for the Oceanic. It has the flexibility, you can go snorkeling with it. You can adjust the algorithms, the kind of looks and the feels. I definitely prefer the style of it. It feels stronger, if that makes sense. It has a nice aesthetic to it. The only thing I don't like about it is the user interface. It's a little bit clunky, but once you have everything set up, so you set it to metric, you set kind of the altitude or anything, or the sort of personal conservatism, you've set your algorithm exactly how you want it, your nitrox or your air, then yeah, you just put it on your wrist and away you go. Once it's set up, it's fine. It's a very simple computer. It's a decent sized screen. You can see the digits. They're nice and chunky. You can kind of navigate around everything, but and it comes with that scratch guard, which yeah, I've had sort of scratch guards scratched before, and if that had gone to the screen itself, that would have written the dive computer off, but because it's got that scratch guard, that's a definite selling point for me. The Mares, the main points where the Mares kind of excels is in the user interface, so very easy to navigate and get around it. And it does have the option for wireless air integration in the future if you want it to. But once your dive computer is set up, you don't tend to press too many buttons unless you're doing quite sort of advanced diving. It typically sits on your wrist and you refer to it sort of every now and then and check your NDL. But as far as going in and changing settings and all that kind of stuff, you don't tend to do that much. So for this kind of clash, I'm going with the Oceanic. I just prefer the kind of the aesthetics of it and the kind of the flexibility of the programming on the inside. That dual algorithm is definitely a selling point for me because you can choose between sort of two different algorithms. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you prefer the Mares, the quad? Would you go down the regular quad or give you the option of the Quad Air? It's more expensive, but it just gives you that flexibility that you can have wireless tank information on the screen. I've used sort of wirelessly integrated dive computers before. They are definitely a selling point because they don't just tell you how much gas you have left in the tank, they can tell you gas time remaining. So it tells you your gas supply based on your breathing rate and your depth, how long that gas will last in minutes, instead of just blankly saying you've got X PSI or bar. And this will give you that option to connect it to a transmitter. But yeah, which one would you buy? Let us know in the comments below. Of course, if you want us to compare anything in particular, let us know in the comments below. If you just want me to compare a couple masks or snorkels or more dive computers, let us know what you want us to mash up together and see which one comes out on top. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to sort of like, share, and subscribe to see more like it. And yeah, definitely safe diving out there, guys.
We are an online dive store serving the UK and the world for all your diving equipment needs. So why not visit us at simplyscuba.com or click the box on your screen.